We are going. So, welcome everybody. THP is back for 2022. This is episode 146. As you can see, or if you were listening to the audio version, Jake is not here. He is sick. He decided to start off 2022 right and probably got Rona again. So, Phil is here.
Hello.
Filling in.
Never gets old.
As he does so well.
I try.
Yeah, so this is going to be an awesome episode. If anyone's been on social media, as far as Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you've probably seen some of the new habitats from Leap Habitats. So this episode, we are joined by Mr. Tim Marks and Frank Payne, and I've wanted to have Frank on for a really long time. So we're definitely gonna have to do another episode with Frank at some point because I want to talk about carpet chameleons and Europlatus, and but since Frank is involved with Leap to a degree, I figured, why not?
Yeah.
Well, I keep carpet chameleons and Europlatus, so you got two guys on the show right now that absolutely love those species. So we're happy to talk about them now, I'm sure.
Awesome.
For sure.
Awesome.
Yeah. So the brand is Leap Habitats. Nothing is available yet, but you guys are planning to drop stuff come March, I think is the plan right now.
Yep, the target is March. The putting everything together, I mean, at one point there was the hope that we would be ready in November. But with the container crunch and everything else, at this point, just to play it safe, you can only launch a brand once. I'd rather launch it with all of our products in stock. And so we chose March.
I gotcha. Yeah, I live near Savannah, Georgia, and the port down there, the amount of containers and stuff they have. We were driving over there the other day, actually, and it was like, holy smokes. I've never seen the port that jam full of stuff.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And but it's just getting to the sort of the general Cliff Notes version of the background information and stuff. We can start with Tim and sort of how you got all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I've been keeping reptiles for about 25 years. I'm 39 years old. So that means I was, in my teens. I was just saying to you guys before the show started, one of my passions early on was the Coleonyx genus of eublepharids. Kept a bunch of those, more or less all of them. I think I didn't have elegans and, of course, not reticulatus and metratus. Also a bunch of chameleons. At that time, there was unfortunately, I actually got into the hobby in general the year that Madagascar closed. So it was probably like 1995. And so I got to talk to all the guys that had Parsons chameleons and all these other crazy chameleons. And I even knew some people this is in 1995, a gentleman named Bob Sheehan out in Long Island that was breeding minor. But I didn't get to see any of them, at least not in the Northeast. It was just, it was just too difficult out in California, I'm sure I would have been able to see those kind of chameleons for years after the Madagascar ban, but in the Northeast, it's just not like that. But what I did get into was I had a panther chameleon as a pet, a leopard gecko as a pet. That was my introduction into the hobby. And that quickly grew, as it always does, over the next few years to keeping a bunch of montane chameleons. So I had Quadricornis, Montium, a species known as Wiedersheimite back then, which I think we recognize as Peretti nowadays. Although I'm not exactly sure if they are the same species.
I think it's a different species.
Yeah, they look different, that's for sure.
I think they are.
So I was able to successfully breed Montium and the Wiedersheimite back then. I was never able to get Quadricornis to court, ever, not once. They just had no interest in one another, whereas the Montiums were really easy and the Wiedersheimite too. And one cool thing about those species is they had no problem laying their eggs in a flower pot or a plant pot. They would just climb right in the bottom of their plant and dig their eggs. So, never had lost a female to egg binding or anything like that. This was at a time when the Chameleon Information Network, the CIN, was very popular. And I avidly devoured every, issue that would come to my door. I bought all the back issues. The Vivarium magazine was out back then, Philippe de Vosgely. And as well as the way I got into reptiles actually was one of the introduction to reptiles in the back of Tropical Fish Hobbyist magazine, because I was in the aquariums before that. Yeah, long story short, I ended up with a bunch of geckos, a bunch of chameleons, dabbled in Phylomedusids, an awesome group of frogs, in my opinion. And then kind of like all of a sudden, as a kid, this is like 6 years later, my interest started to shift back to aquariums, and I got into saltwater reef aquariums and went to college and started a career in the saltwater aquarium industry.
That's awesome.
That's when I built Ecotech Marine, which we can talk about because it's kind of like the birthplace of Leap.
Yeah, it's crazy how many people or the kids start off with, whether it's just a goldfish in a bowl or like an actual 10-gallon, freshwater tank, and it kind of just snowballs from there. I feel like moms and dads are less apprehensive to do like a little fish tank from Petco than they are to say get like a bearded dragon or something. So it's always funny how many of us started as fish people, and it evolves.
I remember when I read the article on leopard geckos in the back of Tropical Fish Hobbyists, I felt a little bit of guilt, a little bit of shame even, to go talk to my mom about, like, I think I'm into something new. I hope I hope that doesn't make you feel like you supporting me with all these aquariums was a bad decision.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like, so coming from the aquarium industry and going to the I was fish, then reptiles, then fish, then reptiles for the past 30 years, right? But most recently, professionally, coming from the aquarium industry and going into the reptile industry, I've seen about 30% overlap. Like 30% of the reptile people I talk to
Sounds about right.
have been pretty serious fish keepers, whether it be a saltwater tank or a planted tank, but pretty serious. And then at some point they decided reptiles are more fun, which is where I'm at.
That's great, man. That's awesome. Frank, I feel like most of the people listening to this have either listened to your amazing episode on Lizard Brain, or they're following you from, the magazine stuff, or just like what Justin and I put out on Instagram. But you want to give a little quick thing about yourself?
Sure. I'll try to be quick. I'm not very good at that. But yeah, thank you very much.
Of course.
Yeah. So
but actually, real quick, I'll even say that it's infrequent that I will cherry pick segments after I listen to a complete podcast. But that one you did with Bill, I went back and I didn't listen to the whole thing because I don't have that much time to do it. But I was like, oh yeah, 242, go back to that, So it was a great show. Anybody listening, check out Lizard Brain Radio with Frank, because it was a great show.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, geez. So my name is Frank Payne. I have been keeping reptiles for about the same time as Tim. We're pretty much the same age. So like 25 years plus at this point. I've been obsessed with reptiles my entire life. So I say 25 years plus, but that's like when I started seriously keeping reptiles. I've had reptiles in my home since I can remember, since I was 3, like literally my whole life. I've just been obsessed with reptiles, all through high school and everything. And then even while I was in college getting my bio degree, I started working summers at Clyde Peeling's Reptiland, which is a great small but AZA zoo that focuses on reptiles. They have one of the best collections of reptiles in the AZA, and they're very well respected for what they do with reptiles in the zoo field. So I was very lucky to work for them while I was getting my degree. And then after I graduated, they said, Clyde was like, please come join us full time. So I did. One of the awesome things that Clyde does, the Peelings do, is they build exhibits, because they are just so good at it, at building naturalistic displays for other zoos and other museums. And so one of the most amazing things that I got to do was, for several years after I graduated college, was travel around the country, staff these exhibits of live animals of a huge variety, and basically just take care of animals 7 days a week in New York City and Miami and Chicago and Sacramento, and on, and get to train people to do that. And it was just incredible. It was a wonderful experience that I got to do for for several years. And if you can imagine, a guy in early 20s traveling the country, getting to hang out with reptiles and just see the, country is the best gig ever for me.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a dream herper's job,
It really was. And a couple personal issues came up where I decided to switch careers and became a teacher. I do love teaching very much. That was one of my favorite parts of being a zookeeper, was the education aspect. So I decided to become a science teacher, which I've been doing for 15 years. I worked at the zoo part-time for even as I became a teacher, I did every summer there for 7 years, even after I left the zoo full-time, just helping out wherever I could. The whole time keeping animals in my own personal collection, even while doing the professional stuff. And it's always been fairly small scale at home, just a small, I say small scale, but we're talking at minimum 50 animals at a time, but then the past 5, 7, 8 years, something like that, I can't keep track. It's turned into more of a business, and it's just kind of snowballing and getting bigger and bigger. And it seems to be a little bit, more recognized by people a little bit more every year. And it's just going really well, and it just keeps expanding and taking over my life. And it's just a dream come true, honestly.
Don't fight it. Let it happen.
Yeah. just rolling with it, I'm super tired all the time because of how much I'm doing, but man, it's it's all the most amazing stuff. So very lucky.
Side note, what do you find is harder to teach, middle school or high school?
Middle school. By a country mile, as they say.
Really?
It's oh yeah. It's
hormones, man. Hormones ruin it.
That's true.
So I make this joke all the time that with the hormones that are pumping through their body that are brand new, they're not even the same species as us. They're different species of animal, right? They haven't. Those hormones have turned them into something else for several years. And our job as middle school teachers is to not let them destroy themselves and the world around them, and to guide them on the right path so that those hormones balance out and then they become human beings again, and all that. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Middle schoolers, they do love to learn way more than high schoolers do. They're not as apathetic. The energy level is there. That part is great, but it's just, they're just bouncing off the walls. High schoolers are just a bit more sedate and a little bit more, adult, I guess.
Yeah.
I have an 8-year-old, and I'm already mentally preparing myself for those years.
12 to 14, man. It's brutal. It's brutal.
Yeah, I have a 7-year-old, so
yeah. 6.
I have an 8-year-old girl, I should say. So I'm really.
Yeah, me too. And 7, Frank as well. So we're all
6-year-old girl. Yeah.
In line for hell.
Maybe we can start a therapy group or something.
Sounds good.
For it.
When I was 14, I took a family vacation, and I was just a total jerk to my parents the whole time. And to this day, I'm 35 now. To this day, I still apologize. Once a year, I'm like, hey, remember that trip we took back in, whatever? I'm really sorry that I was that way.
There are so many times I think about these specific moments in my childhood that I absolutely remember where I was just a little piece of what, and I see it in my kids, and I'm just like, why did I do that?
Mm-hmm.
For me, parenting wise, it seems like the longer I go, the more I understand why my parents did what they did, at the time, and how odd it is to be. I mean, I just turned 31, but to be young-ish, I should say, and be a parent, and then realizing your parents pretty much went through the same thing at the same age, but not, when you were little, they seemed much older and much more. I don't know how to describe it. And so now
you're a grown up. You don't understand.
It's crazy.
Yeah, they seem like adults.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I get
it. What was the decision as far as starting Leap, and you talk about the saltwater aquarium community and stuff? At what point did you say we should delve into the herp world?
Right. So within the aquarium, we're entrepreneurial people at Ecotech. It's owned by myself. Well, it's different now, but it was started by myself and 2 other guys, and then we merged with another gentleman. And all of us are about the same age, and we're extremely entrepreneurial people. None of us have had a real job, and half of us haven't finished school. And now we're running, and then we started this company and we ran it for 15 years, and longer now. It's 20 years. Building aquarium products, building smart aquarium products that work on your iPhone that you can connect to and remotely control, and building our own circuit boards in house, and acting as a manufacturer, quality control systems, customer service. It got to a point for me as a director of manufacturing where I had a little bit of time to dabble and pursue a bit of my own entrepreneurial spirit within the space of ecotech. And at that time, about 5 years ago, Madagascar reopened. And so, wouldn't you know, it caught my fancy. I recall actually being like, oh, I wonder what the chameleon world is up to right now. And I went on Facebook and I went to a group and I found out that people are buying Parsons chameleons right now. And that was it. I mean, I had to get one. I had to get a yellow lip. And so that just sucked me back in. And I told the guys, look, we're getting a pet chameleon, build a beautiful enclosure for it. I built a huge, like 6x6 by 36-inch enclosure for it. And, had it in the office, and everyone was like, cool, pet chameleon. Way to go, Tim. This is interesting. But little did they know that wasn't going to be the end of it. So before we knew it, there was an entire wall in the sales room, like 20 feet long, with baker's racks full of all the other chameleons and Europlatus that I had acquired over the next 6 months, maybe, after that first Parsons chameleon.
Go big or go home.
Yeah, it was bad. I got the bug real bad. And then again, they let me do it. I mean, my business partners are phenomenal. They let me do it, and they let me hire an intern to help me maintain the collection so that I could still act as the director of manufacturing and be responsible for the quality control and the manufacturing of the enterprise. And then it was, guys were, Tim, like, honestly, it's a little much. Everyone is kind of sick of the crickets in the sales room, and like, what do you think? And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll build a reptile room over in the extra area on the east wing of the building. And so I guess actually the south wing of the building, but regardless. So whatever. I'm one to ask forgiveness before I'm going to ask permission. So I went and I built a reptile room number 1 over in the old facility, and moved everything in over there, and didn't really like acquire more total animals, but just optimize, like we all do with our collections, kind of optimize what species I was working with. But this was a point where I was like, no, guys, like, I truly believe that this is actually more than just a reptile hobby. I'm convinced that we have a huge opportunity in this market space, given the technology and our capacity as a manufacturing company. And I just need a little bit of time. And it was at that time that I did explain to them that, look, there is a gap in the marketplace for an enclosure, for a reptile enclosure that delivers what the hobbyist expects, but is flat pack, easy to distribute, and provides adequate ventilation while still maintaining humidity, and potentially is customizable so that if you need more ventilation, you can have it. And I had a lot of ideas. I mean, none of which I was particularly happy with, a lot of prototypes, but I didn't push any of it on my business partners until I was really proud of it. And it was about 2016, I want to say. I was fortunate enough to go to Madagascar with a bunch of great people, and while I was on the trip to Madagascar, I don't know why, and it's odd that it happened at Madagascar, but it's just because all you're thinking about is reptiles. I mean, it's like, how can you think about anything else?
Right.
You're thinking about the animals you see in the field. You're thinking about how you're keeping them at home. That's all you're thinking about. And so one day it was just like, oh my gosh, I know what it is that I need to do to make this enclosure what the market needs. And what that idea was the concept of using corrugated plastic. And and bending it, and then combining that with custom aluminum extrusions and injection molded parts to create the first ever truly designed and built for the reptile space mass produced habitat, mass produced cage. Because prior to that, we're talking about glass aquariums that had a front door installed on them.
Yeah.
And we're talking about fabrications from sheet stock, which is a really good improvement in husbandry. But you know that it's hard to distribute that. It's hard to make those. You're not going to see a big box company stocking PVC enclosures.
Right.
But this concept to me seemed like something that we could go far with. And I went back to the machine shop. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm a machinist, and I went back to the machine shop and I made my first prototype with the machining equipment I have at work, and then I would take it home and finish stuff at home. I have a machine shop in my basement, and I put it together. I made a proof of concept, as we call them, and I picked it up and I threw it at my business partner and I said, "Catch." And he was like, "Holy shit," you know. Like, I can't believe it's as rigid as it is. And I was like, yeah, like this actually works. Like it holds, you know, it works. I was even amazed. I mean, I knew conceptually that it made sense, but when I put it together, I couldn't believe just how well it did what I thought it would do. And then it's been like 3 or 4 years of grinding and just getting through there are so many nuances to a new to the world technology to get it to market that nobody, you know, realizes. And I'm not going to bore anyone with, but like every little thing has to be worked out. Oh yeah, absolutely. Patented.
I've heard the patent process is a nightmare.
Well, honestly, that kind of stuff we're used to because with our enterprise, we have a bunch of patents. So we have a patent attorney. You know, I write the patent, the basic description, and give them all the drawings, and that's hours and hours of work. But like he does the rest. I'm talking the manufacturing. I'm talking the quality control, and you know, because you're talking to the guy that at Ecotech, like that's what I'm responsible for is the engineering specs and the manufacturing specs and the quality control parameters and how it comes in and what we check to make sure that it's the right product and that it gets put together right. I build all the assembly lines. And so, you know, being able to create this product myself within the, you know, as an entrepreneur within Ecotech, it was amazing. But it was painstaking. It took a lot of time and didn't want to, I thought it was so good. I just didn't want to introduce it until it was ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been watching all the YouTube videos and stuff since y'all have been uploading that, and
well, that's exciting.
You know, to do my homework and stuff before this. And I know, I think Jack had mentioned that it's been like a 5-year process, so it's not like you guys just made this, you know, a month ago and said, "Cool, and now we got new cages." Like it's been a process, and everyone should go check out those videos because the warehouse and just the building you guys have,
super
me and
impressive.
Phil were talking about that before you guys came in. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So we moved into that about a year ago. And you know, that was like all hands on deck. You know, moving from our old building about 25,000 square feet to our new building 65,000 square feet, and that's actually how Jack got involved in Leap, because prior to that he's just my buddy. You know, we'd hang out, talk cars, drink beers, whatever. But excuse me, but when it was time to start the move, I was like, dude, can I pay you to just help me move? Like, can I get you on the payroll for the hours that you're home to just help me move my responsibilities of the facility over? He's like, hell yeah. So that was how Jack started. And before I get to where we ended up with Jack, I want to back up a little too, because I want to introduce how Frank was involved in this whole thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Because Frank was there. So back up to, I bought my Parsons chameleon. Well, then I told you a few months later, I had, 50 animals. Well, a good percentage of those animals were because ever since a kid, I had been in love with carpet chameleons. And it didn't take long on Facebook to figure out that Kevin Stanford and Frank Payne were the Carpet Chameleon guys. And wouldn't you know, both of them were within an hour from me. So I reached out to Frank on Facebook, and in case you don't already know, Frank's a nice guy. So it was like, I mean, truly nice guy. And I bought a few Carpet Chameleons. I mean, Frank, you tell me at this point, what's your perspective of when we first met?
Yeah, like it was about that time when like it has to be at least 6 years ago at this point when you were getting into chameleons. It was Carl that introduced us, I think, actually, in person anyway, because Carl knew you when you were a kid.
Oh yeah, he did.
Yeah. So he introduced and like, yeah, interested in Carpet Chameleons. Here you go. Like he bought a handful off of me, and then we just were talking Carpet Chameleons regularly because we were both really into it. Bought a few more, and then just like on and on. Next thing you know, like we're just friends. We're just friends
Yeah.
that are, you know, that like talking about reptiles. Then we're occasionally hanging out, like going to birthday parties and stuff like that together, and just, but pretty much every single day, along with a couple other guys, talking about reptiles.
Yeah.
You know, so I've just
Chameleons specifically.
Yeah, exactly. Mostly chameleons, but it's just, and it just went from, oh, we like chameleons to it just kind of developed into a friendship. And then, you know, because of the fact that we're both so passionate and interested in reptiles and progressive reptile husbandry, it's just, you know, that's what kind of leads us into Leap and everything that's going on there.
Well, even back then, I mean, I definitely recall sharing the little proof of concepts over time, you know? I mean, I remember there was a version of a cage that I'd rendered at one point to show you guys, that was it had like an injection molded plastic bottom, and then vertical rails, and then you know, plastic panes that would slide in, and you know, early stuff. And the idea was it would flat pack and be more economical to manufacture. But yeah, and I mean that stuff goes back easily 4 or 5 years. Those kinds of proof of concepts, and you know, what better way to fit, you know, develop your entrepreneurial depth than with a group of like-minded people. And the group that we would communicate with was all a bunch of PA guys: Kevin Stanford, Carl Kataw, and really talented reptile and amphibian keepers and long-term reptile and amphibian keepers. And all, you know, we get together every now and then, but just on Facebook Messenger, you know, chatting it up all day long for 5 years.
Yeah, when I initially saw that Frank would, you know, posted some sort of, you know, some little like teasers before, you know, sort of the word got out and stuff, it's like what a perfect guy for that product in particular, because of what he works with and what, you know, the stuff that he's got dialed in, you know, like the Dracos and stuff like that. You know, it's a perfect fit.
It worked out. It seems like it worked out so perfectly for everyone involved, you know, just because it started with the friendship and mutual trust and mutual interest. And then it's just like, yeah, you want to build this perfect reptile enclosure. And then like, okay, I'm obsessed with that. You know, I that's all I think about all day is how to better keep these animals, you know. And so it's like, remember, you know, every once in a while I get a phone call from Tim. Well, what do you think about this idea? You know, and just bouncing stuff back and forth and giving him my perspective, you know, because what I am not is an engineer.
Yeah.
Because he could talk about engineering and I would just go,
yep.
But we want to talk about animal husbandry. You want to talk about animal behavior. And, you know, that's all I think about. And that's all I'm passionate about. So it fit so perfectly together. And the fact that we are both in Pennsylvania within an hour and a half drive of each other, and that we have, you know, a lot of the same interests. It just worked out. It didn't like, there wasn't like a thing. It just happened. It just kind of naturally happened.
I mean, for 3 years, I can remember telling you that I think I'll have the prototypes this summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many years did that go on? No. I'm pretty sure I'll have them this summer. And there's a lot of reason behind all the missed summers where Frank didn't get prototypes to try out.
I know, I keep waiting. But I have them now, though. That you can see them in the background. I finally have them. I finally have my prototypes for like 6 months or so now.
But imagine the value to a guy like me. I have my own reptile room, right? But Frank has a lot more experience with a lot more animals than I do.
Mhm.
I really just work with a couple of species that I'm super passionate about. I'm super passionate about the industry. I'm super passionate about the technology, but I don't pretend to be one of these guys that just knows everything about every animal. But Frank's breadth of knowledge is just enormous. And, imagine how lucky it is for me to have a friend in Frank that I can, be like, well, how would this work? And finally, after all these years, 8 months ago or whatever, however long ago it was, 6 months ago, Frank finally got his hands and was able to plant his first leap terrarium. And for me to get the nod and the thumbs up
Mhm.
from Frank, and I mean, even better, I remember the text where Frank said, "Hey, Tim, Elise likes them even better too." And
My
his
my
wife.
my wife is basically, so like with the business as big as it's gone, as Living Art has gone, I'm teaching full time. I could not take care of all these animals by myself. Right? My wife Elise stays home. Her job is the animals. She does a lot of the day-to-day care, and like Tim says, with his person, Kelsey, who takes care of his animals, Elise is basically the zookeeper and I am the supervisor, right? I do all the breeding of the animals, right? I do all the pairing, I do all like the egg, egg incubation, all that stuff. I do everything breeding related. But when it comes to feeding and cleaning, she does all that. So anyway, we're completely unsolicited. I was like, yeah, no, these are the best enclosures that we have, and I have a good number. Like, and she's like, these are by far the easiest to work with, and that is the best nod. That's better than my nod because of my level of experience. I can work around. I mean, I can keep a reptile in a cardboard box if I have to,
Right.
and it'll be fine. But to have somebody that with fairly limited experience, to be like, okay, this is what's easy, this is what's enjoyable for me to actually work with the animals the most. And I texted Tim immediately, like, you got the nod, man. It's all good.
Yeah,
It's
it was a big moment.
Pepsi challenge of cages,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
That's great.
Well, one of the things I like about them the most is the fact that you guys worked it out to where they fit on a baker's rack evenly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Me and Jake, we call it.
Yes.
We've used baker's racks for all kinds of stuff. We call it the poor man's rack because we didn't want to bother with a bunch of PVC. We just lay like an ultratherm pad on the back and keep our stuff on that, and that worked great. But when I had dart frogs, it was a constant game of Tetris of like, okay, I can get this like 24 by 24, by 18 or whatever, and then one of these 12 by 12 by 18s, but then there's like 8 inches that I just can't use.
That's
And
right.
so, and then they're so heavy, I don't like moving them around because I'm afraid the bottom's going to fall out. And so it was just when I saw that you guys were focused on making sure they worked with baker's racks and stuff, I was like, that's
well,
perfect.
As small reptile and frog people, like that is exactly it. That right
we've
there.
all dealt with it for so long, and that was definitely one of the aspects that I was most passionate about. Is like everything. I'm like, one of my pieces of advice, like everything you need to make needs to fit on these baker's racks. Everything.
Yep.
Because it's perfect for the keeper because there's no wasted space and it looks good. Like Tim said, a lot of the glass terrariums, they're fish tanks with front doors on them, and they don't fit something that you can buy. So if you want something that's nice and that actually fits them, Justin, like you were just describing, like otherwise it never matches, it doesn't fit quite right. Like we all use the baker's racks. It's what everybody has available. And so that is the way in which you can get someone to have one or two of these and have it look perfect and fit perfect, but then expand in the future and have it do so very easily, that anyone can do. And there's not, well, where am I going to put this? Am I going to have to build something, or am I going to have to get something that doesn't actually work right? That's one of the things that seems small, maybe from an outside observer, but like, as you pointed out, Justin, from somebody that's been in the hobby industry for so long, like that's actually a very important thing.
Yeah. And we have these racks, and there's just, like I said, there's always so much dead space that if you combined all those gaps and stuff, you could almost have an entire extra shelf. And so it was always so frustrating because it was like, I don't have a big room. And so I'm
Yep.
constantly shifting things and trying to get as, what I can to fit along the walls and as
Same
high as
here.
I can go. And so like
So
that,
one thing we wanted to take that up a notch too, and not just horizontal space, obviously depth, maximize, but we wanted horizontal space, and that's where you get the nesting of the different enclosure sizes within a baker's rack. And don't forget, we're going to come out with the double door versions. So with the double door versions, you'll be able to fit one 30-inch model and one 15-inch model on every baker's rack, or one 42-inch model, which is or 44 actually, which is the whole width. But in addition, the lighting and the accessories, we wanted to be all friendly for the baker's rack, and beyond just there's just too many. It's too common currently to see a product that was adapted from a different industry and just given to us. And so, being a manufacturer, being a mechanical engineer, being a product development guy, we don't buy things and just put our logo on them and sell them. We make everything from scratch. All the molds, it's all our parts. We put we've got, there's a lot of zeros behind the investment behind all of this. And so the lighting, right? We have these clips that easily mount into the baker's rack. And then once you put the two clips in, you take the light and you just, I'm trying to figure out where my camera is, and you just pop it up. And then it's held in place. And we've done all the math to make sure that you can maximize the number of racks per baker's rack. And so, for example, for the smallest habitat that we're offering, it's 15 inches wide by 18 inches tall by 17 inches deep, which is a pretty decent size enclosure for frogs, for example. And on a baker's rack, you can fit 12 of those.
Wow.
And with 12 of those on a baker's rack, you can leave the casters on the rack because you're not going to break them due to the weight. And you can easily take that baker's rack and roll it outside the room with all the lighting, all the cages, all the terrariums, all the plants and substrate and everything in it. One of these days we'll get a weight just to be able to show you, like, here's the physical difference in weight. But it works. And we're realizing things that we never realized, which is that we can just tilt a baker's rack 90 degrees and actually clean the spiders out from behind. Right?
Yeah.
And now our reptile room looks beautiful all the time. We're also going to be introducing a fogging manifold, which is something I'm really looking forward to, that will also clip into the baker's rack and let you adjust the amount of fog that you're distributing to all your habitats.
That's very impressive.
So that people are going to like that one, I think.
Well, it's funny that something as simple as a clip that goes to the bottom of a shelf on a baker's rack, it's like, I've been zip tying stuff to the bottom of these racks forever, and now anytime I got to move things, I got to cut them and put on new ones. So it's like, how come we haven't thought about this before?
It's a simple thing, but it's because, like Tim said, people aren't a lot of the supplies and the materials aren't made for the reptile industry. Right. It's all modification from stuff that exists before, or it's just like not thinking about those things, from a reptile keeper's perspective.
I just like how it's uniform to a degree that's like, how do I phrase this? Okay, so using baker's racks my entire herpetocultural career, it's never exactly uniform. So if I'm using Exoterras, or I'm using Vision cages, or I'm using Zillas, whatever, one's here, then the next one's here, then another one's here, and then I'm like, well, how high do I make the shelf? Do I go to 18 inches? Well, no, I can't do 18 inches because then I have no space for lights. Now you guys have, pun intended, done the math, and it's just easy. It's plug and play.
That's the idea.
And a big goal too between now and launch, and one of the reasons why we're happy with the March launch, is we're going to be pumping out videos. So, a baker's rack will show you how to, where to measure out the positions of the baker's racks. How many baker's racks did it take us all to build? before we finally figured out the logical way to actually put a baker's rack together.
Wait, there's a logical way?
There's a couple,
wait,
but there's
See, I didn't know
some
that.
better
Is there-
ways.
Is there one?
You mean
Yeah,
having
there-
like the two lower clips than the other two, and so then you're not even, and then you have to take them all off and adjust it, and then you still didn't do it right? Is that
So
That's how you're supposed to do it. That's how I do it.
without getting into the weeds, the ideal way, in my experience, is you put all the shelves on the ground, you build the posts, you put them in through the corner holes, so that now you've got all 4 posts standing, and then you take one shelf, slide it up, okay, have a buddy hold it there, and then put the 4 corners on, slide it down, boom, on. Then you do
That's
each
the
shelf
engineer-
from the bottom up.
the engineer in you coming out?
That's
Us common
what I
folk,
do.
We don't think that hard about it.
I
Do
make
you know-
I make assembly
many-
lines for a living.
I was gonna say, do you know how many metal racks or metal shelving I've dented and dinged from smacking it with a ball peen hammer because I can never
Yeah.
get it just right?
I'm gonna
I'm pointing at one right now that has a bent shelf that I hit
Yeah.
with a hammer because I
Yeah.
got angry with it and I bent the bar.
100%.
Well, we're here to help with that, right? So
Right.
that's what it all is. The video on how to assemble a leap enclosure is going to painstakingly go through. You could wing it, right? But if you watch this video and observe the tools I'm using and look at the way I'm doing it, it'll be very straightforward. I can put together a leap habitat in 10 minutes. I can put together the habitat itself in 5 minutes. It just takes another 5 minutes to install the liner, which is a bit more of a delicate process. It's not delicate, it's just there's a couple of different steps. But
That liner is
I,
awesome, by the way.
it's how the whole thing works.
Yeah.
That's
'cause
what
that was-
makes
That was the first thing when I saw him. I was like, I wonder how are those watertight? Like if I'm keeping frogs and stuff, like they're
Well,
like,
I saw
keep
it.
them wet. And then I
I
was
saw
like,
it on the
I saw
website.
video, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense now.
Well, you guys had the liner listed separate on the website and like the online store, and I was like, "What the hell is that?" And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, "Oh, I know where that goes. I know exactly where that goes. That's awesome."
it's included in the box. It's just an extra if you want it. But I gotta throw a nod to my mechanical engineer Harry, because Harry and Justin Lawyer, my business partner. But Justin had always said, what about an origami pan for the inside? That way it holds water. So that's like the boom idea right there. And Justin is great at that stuff. But Harry was the one that figured out that we could get it to fold easier if we creased the ideas. Like, come to the shop one day. Frank's been there. Like, when we're in the shop and we're brainstorming, like, we're just, okay, let's go make this. We go run over to the milling machine. We make it. We go to the laser. We make it. Whatever it is we have to do, boom, it's made. And we put it together. But the liner was a big one. Yeah.
I just remember talking with Tim the one time about it. I was saying, like, all right, so he had like the proof of concept of the enclosure as we see it now, but it was basically like a bare bottom, but I remember
Yes.
I don't keep my animals that way anymore. I was like, so here's the thing, like I don't keep anything bare bottom anymore. Everything is planted, is naturalistic, is bioactive. And like, again, not an engineer, animal guy. I'm like, how are you, like, you need to figure out, not me, because I don't know how. You need to figure out a way to get me to be able to plant this enclosure without it draining. I'm like, I have no idea how. I go, but that's what you need to do to make this work even better. And like, it was like a week later, he came back like, yeah, we have this amazing origami idea that I would have never thought of. Like,
and then remember when we added the foam? You were like, but Tim, it leaks around. And I'm like, okay, give me a couple days.
He hands me the liner. He's like, oh, it's great. And like, here, show me. Like, it fits the soil. Water doesn't leak. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. Here's little clips that hold it in place. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's really cool. But again, animal keeper, like, crickets are going to get back here. I have automatic mist
back there.
Yeah, exactly. Geckos, my geckos are going to get back there.
Exactly.
Misting is going to get back there and drip down. I'm like, this is cool, but like, that it doesn't fix these problems. Yeah. Okay. Give me a couple days. A couple days later, it comes back and it's fixed.
Yep. It's been fun having a guy like Frank to give, because I will recognize when a situation's not ideal, but I don't necessarily know at what point its lack of idealness is like a deal breaker. Mm-hmm. But having a guy like Frank that I can be like, good enough, and he can just shoot it back like, no. you gotta figure this out. Okay. And then, and I trust Frank. And so go back to the drawing board, and I've got a phenomenal team of brilliant people, and, and they trust me that, look, if we put the time into this, it's going to be worth it. And now we're sitting here and we're waiting till March.
Well, I think it's funny that I hadn't heard of Leap until probably maybe almost 2 months ago. Maybe whenever you guys started your actual Instagram ad campaign.
Yes, 2 months ago.
Okay, so right around 2 months ago, and all of a sudden I started seeing this Felsuma, this cartoon Felsuma, and I'm like, what is this Leap? And like,
There's
I started
a lot of
clicking.
mystery behind it all.
Yeah, it was very much a lore. And then that's when I stumbled across the actual Instagram page, and I was like, this is the teaser from hell. This is amazing.
I think we kind of tried to do that on purpose a little bit. Yeah. Like I did because I was always asking Tim, because it's been going on for a while. I'm like, what can I post right now? What am I allowed to post? And then like, I'm just like one little thing, like me holding an enclosure, like enclosures stacked on each other, or like Jack interviewing me in their amazing studio, and just like posting like a thing, like just showing like this amazing looking studio, and have like, what the hell is this? So that's pretty fun.
I was when I was watching the videos too, and you guys did the walk through the studio stuff, I was like looking at all the gear, like, what are they using? What do they got hooked up?
Well, so if any questions about that, so that's a great segue, because I want to take a minute to talk about Jack. So I'm like the founder of Leap. I'm the reptile passionate person behind the brand. Jack is more or less the brand manager. We never know with titles at our company. Next week I might be someone different, or might have to be someone different. Who knows? But whatever, it's all good. And so as a brand manager, so Jack started helping out just to help me move. Like drink beers, go to lunch, move boxes, whatever. And at one point in early summer, late spring, probably late spring, it was still a little chilly, we were getting ready to go down to visit Frank and go to that fish place. And so I took an Enclosure because I had some prototypes, and it was time to show a store, to go to Frank's. I think I might have dropped a couple of Enclosures off with Frank, and then we were going to go to the store.
That was the first time I got one to keep,
with the foam in it, I think, or maybe that was without the foam in it, and that's when you gave anyway.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
So we go down to that fish place, and Jack's just with me to be like, hey, I want to support my buddy, and I want to see what this thing that Tim's been working on is all about. And when we showed the staff at that fish place, and then we talked to them about Baker's rack and flat pack, and toss the terrarium back and forth, they were in love. They were like, this is so much better. Look how much more room we're going to get out of our reptile room now, having everything modular and nested,
so
and
much room for
working
activities
with each other.
Yes.
Favorite movie of all time.
My wife and I say that in our reptile room a lot.
Yeah. And Jack
that'll be the Leap slogan. It'll just have the little Felsuma cartoon, and it just says, so much room for activities. ...
Do you like guacamole?
Do you like best we want to do karate in the garage?
Yep.
So Jack saw what the response was, and it really lit a fire in him. And I've been around a lot of passionate people, but the fire that started burning in him was incredible. And very quickly, it was obvious that not only was Jack a friend, but he was a real asset to the team, and was going way deeper into the scientific aspects of marketing and branding, and the technology behind filming and YouTube, and than I would ever go. I mean, I like playing with tools. If I get distracted, and I'm either going to be up in the reptile room just tweaking things and installing new misting fittings, or I'm going to be down in the machine shop machining something. I mean, that's just what I like to do. And Jack has been able to keep it like in a direction and at a pace that has just been beyond any vision. So when you talk about when you started to see Leap 2 months ago, that was because of engineered and organized marketing blitz that Jack's been responsible for, with all hands on deck. So myself, the reptile husbandry specialist Kelsey, who takes phenomenal photos, as well as our cameraman David, that is just, I mean, David, I hired David as an intern last summer for the machine shop because I'm very good friends with his father, and his father is a machinist. And David, we realized within 2 months, David's future was behind a camera, not even, had nothing to do with machining, which is what he thought he was interested in. And like, this is all these things have come together in the last like 8 months or so, even though the project's been going on for 5 years. So there is so much excitement is all I can say. Just like so much excitement between myself, Frank, Jack, David, Kelsey, and like we're finding other people that are passionate about it now too. And I just can't wait till you guys get one or see one or.
Yeah, man. 100%.
Yeah, I just remember that we have a group chat with a bunch of our friends in it. And I remember we found the Instagram and everyone was like, anybody know what the hell this is or like what it's about? And then as the pictures started coming in and the videos and stuff, we're like, oh, okay. But it was initially like, what is it? What are they doing?
Well, I got questions for you guys. What should we be doing?
I think you're doing a bang up job. Modularity is always awesome because I find that with our circle of friends and then some other people that are reptile enthusiasts, but not necessarily like part of the bona fide community, you know what I mean? They get into something and they're like, you know what? I've had it for 2 years. It's kind of not for me. Maybe they do some horse trading and it's like, well, now I have this beautiful, setup vivarium. Can I convert it to something else? Was the modularity there? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
versatility is a big
versatility,
thing
yeah.
for me. Can I, I was talking to somebody about this today. It was like, when I'm looking at a tub for chondros or I'm looking at a rack or something, I want to be able to, I don't want it to be made specifically for that species. Like I want to be able to, if I end up bumping up a chondro to a bigger tub, now I have an empty tub. I want it to work for, a rhino rat snake, any of the boiga that I have. Tree boas, really anything that uses vertical space, especially in, like an arboreal tub or setup. And so that ability to where it is versatile enough to be used across sort of a spectrum. It doesn't have to be a big spectrum, but at least it has uses with other species outside of just that one.
Sure.
Okay.
So that kind of thing helps. And I mean, me and Jake were actually on the website the other day when I was at work, and we were looking at them, and me and him were debating whether or not I think the tallest model, the 36, would work for an adult rhino rat. And he, for some reason, in his crazy brain, he thought that rhino rats got like 5 feet. And I'm like, dude, you're out of your mind. They don't get that big. I was like, this would work perfectly for an adult.
Yeah, they're pretty moderate.
Yeah, and so I was like, not having to really offer them heat. You have plenty of the height that they'll use. It's it's wide enough, it's deep enough. But I could also use it for stuff like boiga. It's not just specific to something I would use with rhino rats. There's a ton of applications and stuff. And so for me, that's kind of the biggest thing is like, can I get the most out of it over an extended period of time?
Right.
Board with whatever I'm keeping in particular.
So that's something that I'm happy that I got invited tonight, because I'll be the first to tell you, when it comes to snakes, I couldn't, if someone asked me, hey, what's a good snake I could keep in one of your leap enclosures, I would say I'm going to have to defer to an expert on that one. So I'm really looking forward to interacting with you guys more and just explaining to you the different heights, the different widths, and then also we don't have to stick to 17 inches front to back.
Mm-hmm.
We did that for launch because of Baker's rack nesting,
right.
But we can offer a line that's 24 inches deep. We recognize that it's a pretty significant increase in depth that adds a lot of square footage.
Sure.
And I'm just eager to talk to you guys, to talk to other people, to get information thrown at me about what size enclosures, because the real beauty of the patent and the technology behind the habitat design is that the larger you go, the better the economies are compared to competitive enclosure technologies.
Right.
Yeah.
The smaller you go, think about it. A leaf habitat this big still has all the same number of plastic injection molded joints all over it. Same number of extrusions, are just not as long. But when I go this big, the plastic joints, again, same number of joints, just the extrusions are longer. The plastic is, the corrugated material is bigger. That's not where the bill of material is. So our planned largest enclosure for 2022 of 44 by 17 by 42, I don't want to name a price, but I think you're going to be impressed at where it comes out and the fact that it's mail orderable. So
Yeah,
like if
awesome.
there's sizes that we're just ignoring because people assume they're too big, now is the time to figure it out so that I can spend some of my engineering time developing it.
That was actually something else that Jacob was talking about when he was with me the other day. Is he just got some cave geckos, and I mean they're still small, but he's like, at some point I want to find him something that works for, an adult or a pair. And I was trying to think off the top of my head, there's really nothing that's like that size except for like maybe the Nano Exos, but even then I feel like you still want something that's a little wider than you do cube. And so we were milling over options, and I really couldn't think of one that worked aside from maybe some that are made more for like tarantulas or something that you would flip on its back and then it would open up from the top like a chest, which wouldn't really be ideal. But so I don't know. I think there's something there because, Coleonyx, cave geckos, that kind of stuff. I feel like you either have something that's too small or you have something that's too big. Doesn't seem like there's really anything in the middle that works for them, at least to my knowledge. I could be completely wrong.
That was one of my next questions was, are you guys excuse me, you guys have all these beautiful jungle arboreal stuff. Is there anything in the works for arid stuff and then basically terrestrial stuff where you have the same surface area as the ones that you show on the baker's rack, but they're half the height? Because if I'm doing, knobtails or chondrodactylus or whatever, they're not going to climb up there. You know what I mean? So now I can have even more shelves. And then if you are selling the baker's racks, are you going to sell individual shelves? Like add more?
Yep. So, okay. Yes.
Okay.
So let's think about it, right? Terrestrial setup. The depth of the front door, do we need it to be 4 inches? Probably not. If we're going to put a sand layer or something in the bottom for a Coleonyx gecko, and this is, again, subject to discussion, subject to debate, but it's easy for me to do now. And we know we want to launch our terrestrial line in the second half of 2022. So yes, there would be a more arid backdrop for it. And the liner would most likely not necessarily feature as tall of a depth, because I think we could shrink it down. By shrinking it down, that allows the front screen door to be smaller, and then that gives more viewing area, even if the whole enclosure is only 12 inches tall.
And see, that's great, but I would even, just me thinking like the geckos I keep, I want oftentimes as deep a substrate dam as I can get, because I'm going to pack in pounds of sand because they're going to dig, 3-4 inches down to do whatever tunneling they're going to do or egg laying or what have you. So like for me, I mean, obviously we want it to be aesthetically pleasing. We want to see the animal. It's also got to be pretty for the people that don't have, 50 of them. Having a bigger viewing area is key. But if you did something that was like 1/3 substrate dam, 2/3 door, and it's still only, 12 or 15 inches tall, I think that's awesome.
Well, this is where I defer to you subject matter experts, right? So, Frank, is the current screen door sufficient height for a desert terrarium?
It is. I wouldn't go shorter. So that's the thing
Okay.
is, because like Phil was saying, so many terrestrial species are fossorial to some degree or another. Even like blue tongue skinks, like all sorts of geckos, like most of them will dig if given the opportunity. It's a natural behavior for them. So no, you don't need that substrate necessarily for planting like we do in our tropical setups, but the animals are going to utilize it. So yeah, I don't think you need to make it deeper than what we currently have, because it is like 4 inches now.
Yeah, it looks great the way it is now.
It's 4 inches.
I think we could look at a shorter version. But yeah, like Phil said, that depth actually I think would be beneficial to a lot of terrestrial species.
And I love
And then
the screen in the front with the holes in
Yeah.
the origami, that cross ventilation. So there's a famous herpetologist, Vogel, who is one of the leading venomous guys in the world. He wrote the arboreal pit viper book, and it's a textbook. It's like that thick. It's the Holy Bible on Asian pit vipers, and he shows
that
these
chimera, that white.
it's a black cover, but yeah, it's edition Chimera, and
yeah,
awesome book. And you could tell it took him 30-40 years to write that book, because the drawings of the habitats and the cartoon sketches that he did, it's all drilled together plywood. And he shows how to do screen in the front and screen at the top so that the cross ventilation comes through. And like, I'm looking at the origami thing with the holes, and I'm like, this is brilliant, because I can pack in a bunch of dirt and it's still going to have a quote unquote cross breeze.
Yeah, the ones behind me here, Phil, like I have Jackson's chameleons, I have the Blue Beauty and Knowles, I have Europlatus, and
Nice.
I packed full of dirt, live plants in it, but those holes that Tim engineered in it to allow that good air exchange. So it's keeping the good humidity that the animals need, but also that one of the most overlooked aspects of
stagnant.
It's by far one of the most overlooked aspects of reptile husbandry is air circulation.
Sure.
Like I majorly changed how I keep my blue tongue skinks, because I was keeping them in stacked PVC enclosures, and the stagnation of the air and the lack of a thermal gradient in the air because of that, it was all uniform, right? Because even with some ventilation, heat could not truly escape from the top.
Right.
So that's one of the things I've changed for some of my terrestrial stuff. That's like one of the best things that racks do, that like an ARS or something does, because there is ventilation in the top. So yeah, you heat the animal from underneath and the air actually can escape. And the leaf ones do that.
Well, so then maybe getting back to the optimal terrestrial, right? So I know if we went down to 12 inches tall, that we could fit a whole nother rack, right? We could fit at least five shelves. But then the question would be, how low do I need to go to get 6? And then the next question is that height too low? So that would be my question. That would be the kind of thing I come back once I've done the models and maybe create a render, and I come back to you guys and I say, what do you think?
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I don't think you want to go less than 12 inches.
Yeah. I agree, because we're talking 4 and 8, right? 4 below.
Correct.
And
Correct.
8 above. There's your 1/3, 2/3, like you were saying, Phil.
Yeah, and I think too, so it's easier to how do I phrase this? So if I have a planted vivarium with Europlatus in it, right, whatever, or dart frogs, things are growing, bioactivity is doing its thing, it's working, it's a cycle. I'm not in there rummaging around. While as my arid desert geckos that are just pooping and there's no living creatures in there to eat it or use it, I'm gutting that cage more frequently. I'm sand sifting, and like when it's smaller than an 8-inch hole and I got my sausage fingers with a scraper going in there, it still has to be user serviceable. Right.
So
so 12 inches is the bare minimum.
Yeah.
I think so.
And then just to coincide with all this arid terrestrial stuff is weight. So, we look at the leap habitat as being this lightweight, airy, potable, throw it to your friend, sci-fi awesomeness. But what happens when I put
10 pounds of sand?
I was literally going to say 10 pounds of sand plus another 10 pounds of actual rock. Like, obviously it's on the baker's rack, so it's not that big a deal, but is there a gap underneath like an Exoterra? And is that bottom going to bow? Is that bottom going to crack out? If I go to pick it up, is the whole thing, like Justin said, going to just fall on the floor?
There's so many times where I picked up Exos that were filled with dart frogs. I'm like, this thing is going to I'm going to pick this up and it's just everything's going to fall out of the bottom.
Yeah.
It was amazing that it didn't.
So it does sit on the bottom, flush on the bottom.
That's
so you
awesome.
don't have to worry about, like, when it's on the shelf, you don't have to worry about it, like, falling out.
Brilliant.
As far as the amount of weight that it can handle in its, with the plastic rivets that hold the bottom together, that's something that now that we're talking terrestrial and we're talking sand, I'm going to quantify to make sure, because
people
that
will want to
becomes important.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
And like Phil said, it's not just the sand, the substrate, but people are you want to put rocks sometimes, but definitely cork and definitely like logs and stuff like that. So like
sure.
the weight will, cork's not too
Yeah,
heavy, but if you put
and
a
don't
bunch
get me
of
The
wrong.
stuff in
logs,
there, it will
cork,
add up.
dirt, that's all tropical type weight that we know is good. But man,
Yeah.
sand, rocks, whew,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then
I have to actually quantify the strength.
Sure.
And maybe that, we either spec it no more than this weight, or I deliver a solution that can handle the added weight.
and I think people would be totally cool if you said, "Hey, look, it can handle 10 pounds of dry weight." So and make sure you specify, because wet is always heavier than dry.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
if it's 10 pounds of dry weight and I add in another 5 pounds of rock, well, I'm gonna have a problem, and that's gonna come down to like warranty stuff and like, well, you're an idiot. You put 10 pounds of rock on top of it and then you picked it up. So like if I'm gutting a cage, like my girdle tail enclosures, each one's got to have at least 10 pounds of flat stone, like no foam, real stone, just for that's what they live in. So I'll take all the rocks out first and then I'll pick it up. So there's only probably, say, a 10-pound bag of calcium sand in there with some soil mixed in, but I'm not going to pick it up with all the rocks because I'm not an idiot. But people might do that and then be upset.
With the Leap enclosures, you can. That's something we're marketing. So, I don't want that feature to go away with terrestrial habitat. So, my goal, just from a branding and from an engineering perspective, would be to deliver a cage that can handle that.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because that is something to think about. That is a lot denser of a substrate than soil.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Now, being corrugated, I'd imagine they hold heat really well.
Yeah, they're very good at holding heat. Absolutely.
Is
It's
there
very
like a
well
max,
insulated.
Is there like a max temp though that you'd recommend? Like if I have Ackies. So if you did a size where I was like, this is perfect for a pair of Ackies, and I was just blasting it with heat. I mean, I think my cage right now is the hot spot is at like 180 something. Like I've never kept anything that hot. It's like keeping them in an oven. It's so
the material
for me.
The material polypropylene that it's made from has a lower melting temperature than other materials that we're used to, like PVC and whatever else. The grade of polypro that we're using is a V0 rated grade, which means it's self-extinguishing. It's not if it burns, it doesn't continue to ignite. It goes out.
Yeah, it'll melt, but it won't catch on fire and burn the whole house down.
Correct. But with respect to that, so the melting temperature is way higher than what an organism could survive at. So you can use, we have a metal aluminum screen on top. You can use whatever heat you need.
Right.
If we're talking in the mid 200s and above, at which point the material itself will have an issue, which is easily a 2x factor of safety over what 100. I mean, I can't imagine the hottest reptile would ever bask above 100 or 110.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Justin was just saying, that the Ackies, they monitor keepers do give Ackies and other desert monitors like 150 and above.
And yeah, you're a master
150
like that. They're getting
above.
Yeah, but at the same time, you're not putting that in a 18 by 12 by 17 enclosure, because it's too that'll bring it to well in excess of ambient temperature.
Yeah, so the critical thing, exactly. So it is a reasonably good insulator, right? So you're gonna, like any reptile keeper, you're gonna have to balance your basking temps versus your ambient temps, and you have a new material here that's going to insulate differently than a glass or a plywood or whatever, and you're going to have to work that out. But as far as the actual robustness of the material, like anything, you're not going to want to put that basking light 2 inches away from the edge of the terrarium. You're going to want to center it, offset it on one corner to be over a suitable basking area. The higher, 150 is impressive, Frank. That's impressive
ridiculous.
Temperature.
Well,
is that all day long, or is that just for an hour or two?
Mine's all day.
Some people do. So there's a style of keeping and with monitors is 24/7 light and heat, and then providing the animals with refuges that they can go to get away from the light, but still have access to the heat. So it's no joke to say like people and the animals are thriving and breeding better apparently in these conditions where they literally have access to light and heat in excess of 150 degrees for 24 hours a day, every day.
Incredible.
I have
that's one of the things that's so cool about this hobby is this kind of information.
The diversity of everything, and the fact that you guys are going to put it out is awesome. I have a Canberra rack that's PVC with sand vipers from the Sahara. So despite the lights being on an 8-hour cycle, the temperature doesn't start to go, like the heating element doesn't start to go for about an hour after the lights come on to kind of simulate the sun coming up and warming everything. But the heat stays at least 100 degrees until like midnight, and lights are out at 8 o'clock. So like even in the darkness, they're still at 100 degrees and it's just cooking, And the Canberra tubs I don't worry about because they're thick as hell. But if I was going to do babies in leap enclosures or something, I would definitely get like a microhalogen where it's going to put the screen and the surrounding plastic's going to easily be 100 degrees for 13, 14 hours a day,
Yeah, the 100-degree temperature doesn't bother me. It's the 150 degrees that you would need to ensure that you have a sufficiently large enclosure to get that heat source away from the walls. That's we're not offering a line that's suitable for these big monitors. Or did you guys reference Ackies as being a species that benefits from that kind of temperature?
Yes,
because that's a species I've identified as something I want to start to research more of. I really like them, and
they're awesome.
I think Frank had them before and showed me. Do you still have them now?
No, I don't have Ackies. I've had Ackies before. The species that I bred for a while were the Kingorum, much smaller. Yeah, but that was the monitor that I bred that you probably saw.
Okay,
but I've worked with a lot of monitor species, but the Kingorum were the ones that I produced.
Yeah,
super cool.
So as we gain experience with those animals, I think we can deliver products that are most cut out to that. I mean, again, it's like we're hobbyists ourselves, right? Like that's what this is. We're hobbyists and engineers with the good fortune of having an entire manufacturing powerhouse behind us. So like, let's use this to our advantage as a group of people in the industry, and let's make some cool products that we all know that we want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
One of the things I'm looking forward to is testing the enclosures with different species, because that just means I get to keep more reptiles, but that means I get to get an Ackie to do like real work on, or whatever, or anything at all, just to be like, okay, what's the best way to keep it in this enclosure? What are some things we need to look out for? Like that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, and we need to be able to provide recommendations of how to best provide the husbandry that species requires within the new, the new technology of the leaf habitat.
So let me ask some personal agenda questions, if I may. Is the cage lockable, and how is the screen on the front and the top attached?
Sure. So the cage doesn't have a formal locking mechanism. It uses latches.
Okay.
Right? But it is aluminum. So if one wanted to rivet a system or screw a system for locking into it, it's easily modifiable. In fact, we really look at the enclosure in general as being something that people may really just look at as a starting point and modify themselves. A good example of that, to get back to real quick, to get back to the area that I'm most comfortable in the frog world, rather than put say you want a water feature, rather than put your pump in the bottom of the enclosure and run all your tubes for the water feature and then foam over all that, drill through the habitat right through the back, put the pump's output outside, foam the whole thing inside, and then specifically drill the areas after foaming that you want to bring the water back in. That way you can put it wherever you want. You know, the whole process of having to route your wiring, your plumbing before you foam is, you know, these are little things that we can do differently. But yeah, so latching, you know, got me into the whole modification thing. But latching is easy. It's not out of the box. Secondly, with respect to the screen, so the screen is conventional screening spline. So we do use a rubber spline that runs the inside perimeter of the screen.
Right.
So its strength is no different than any conventional window screen. You know, it can handle a good amount of strength, but that is what it is.
Okay, but is there like clips so that I can press down and lock the screen in place, or is the spline the only thing holding it in?
So the whole screen, the whole top is like properly screwed in to the cage.
Okay,
so the top itself is not going to come out.
Okay.
If a snake is strong enough to push up on the screen and blow out the spline, that could be something to consider. And if that were something that was popular, look, again, I'm an engineer. All I think are like solutions, right?
Sure.
So if that was something that was a popular, like, guys, I don't trust it for snakes, or I had a snake and it got out or whatever, my solution would be to install a cover over the bottom to prevent the spline from being able to pop out.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know.
You follow what I'm saying,
yeah,
Frank, on that?
Yeah, but even if they're pushing up on it, it's still going. It's not going, you know, with the.
It's going in our favor.
Yeah.
It's in our favor. It's if it were flipped and they pushed up on it, they'd pop the spline right out. That's exactly right. It's oriented already in our favor for pushing up. So if you've ever seen like a chameleon cage that has the screening spline that holds, it's that same concept that retains the screens currently.
Okay. I'm just trying to think about stuff pushing.
But again, like Tim said, like the top of it though is a solid piece which is drilled into the thing, so it's not like it's not an Exoterra where if the little plastic latch breaks, the snake pops the lid off.
You're not popping the lid off. I can assure you.
The animal would physically have to go through the screen. So if there are reptiles that are strong enough to do that for sure.
Right.
But unless the animal is physically capable of pushing through the screen, it's not coming out.
Okay.
That's right. It's not popping the lid off, and it's not popping the door off either.
Okay.
Are there any plans for like a? Oh, go ahead, Phil.
No, I was just gonna say is a lot of these companies now what they're doing is somewhere on the latch they're drilling like a pilot hole. So if I wanted to use like a cable lock or a zip tie or something to secure it just in case, do you guys have something like that or no? Again, that would be up to the user, the end user, to drill a pilot hole, no different than we would drill air holes.
So, Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, but in those cases, there's like a thing like this, and the latch comes down like that, right? And then they're drilling this way.
It's an interlock. In some, there's different ways of doing it, but basically, it's interlocking mechanisms of some way in which there's a hole drilled through which you can put a lock, hasp or whatever it's called through.
So the first launch of terrariums has the door pull in the middle and the latch on the top and on the bottom.
Yep.
Future versions have the bottommost latch directly above the door pull. And at that point, you could drill 2 holes and zip tie it or something, like if it was a particularly dangerous species or something like that. But this is all the snake world. You know, keeping animals in enclosures, this is an educational experience for me on that one. So I'm
awesome. I love it.
Yeah, as far as like dart frogs and stuff, is there a
Am
plan
I still here, guys?
Yeah, I can hear you. You hear us, Tim? I don't think you can hear us.
Nah. He may have lost connection.
I can see, like, he's always there.
He's crystal clear on us.
Yeah.
I texted him so that we can hear him. Oh, there he goes.
Okay, Frank just told me you guys can hear me, so that's good. Let
We
me
can
figure
hear
out
you,
how
but
to get
No, we
the
can't.
video back on, and I'll be quiet in the meantime.
we can hear you. We can hear you now. I just can't. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway,
I think we're back.
can you hear us, Tim?
Bark
You
twice
can't hear
if you're
us.
in Milwaukee.
I mean, I could talk.
Yeah, go for it.
I could go for that. Hopefully, Tim gets the tech figured out there. But for dart frogs, as is, I think it would work pretty well. Like what you would have to do for as they are now is simply cover some of the screen. So like at this point now, like with launch, there's not going to be like a separate lid
Okay.
for that retains more humidity. But like just as if you were to buy a glass terrarium that is pretty much all screen on the top, you would just cover up as much of it as you see fit for your particular situation. Right. But like other than that, other than covering up as much of the screen top as you want, other than that, it's perfect for them because of the coroplast size and because of the plastic, solid front. That all does hold the heat and the humidity really well.
Yeah, because that was my only thing is, the open top, it would zap humidity pretty quick for a lot of those. So if you had a way to cover up 2/3 of it, so you could still keep a light on top.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, I don't know, especially it depends how you're keeping it. Are you doing automatic misting? Like, is it like fully planted with soil in that? Then it's not really, doesn't really zap it that bad. Because it does insulate really well. But yeah, I mean, it is a full screen top, and some animals you don't want that. But that would at first that would have to be a customer modification, putting a piece of plexi or a piece of glass on top of it. But maybe that would be something to look at. Have like a dart frog line that has a specifically made top that only has the smaller venting on the top.
Dude, I could totally
fruit
fit
flies getting out.
Rhino rat in this.
Yeah.
Oh, you definitely could. I've kept rhinos
out of his mind.
at this. Yeah, you definitely can. Yeah.
I love how just from because I've done retail sales my whole life, just from marketing and retail sales and online sales, the cage pictures that we're looking on the website right now, they're obviously professionally done. They're beautiful. It shows you exactly what's what. It lets you see other sides of the enclosure. But that's what it looks like in real life. And I've been so disappointed in the past with other companies where you see this really cool, beautiful photoshopped cage, and then you get it and you're like, this is what I bought. And meanwhile, you guys are showing us on your live videos and pictures that it does look exactly like this, even with that backdrop. So
yeah. And we're starting to do that more and more, like in person too. Like actually here in Pennsylvania, the Hamburg Reptile Show and then the Oaks, Pennsylvania Reptile Show. I now have tables at those places. I'm going to start being there pretty much every show. Like the last Hamburg one, we had a leap enclosure on the table, and I'm going to do it again. We're going to do that again this Saturday. But people would walk by, and I had it fully planted with a giant male Jackson's chameleon in it. And it was a showstopper. People literally stopped when they walked by. They had no idea what this enclosure was. But like the most common comment that we got was, "Man, that's beautiful." Well, that's a beautiful enclosure.
Yeah.
Well, let's be honest about that. That's because Frank planted a beautiful enclosure and had a gorgeous Jackson chameleon inside of it.
Well, that didn't hurt. That didn't hurt.
That didn't hurt at all. Check out those catch pans, Phil. Who's driving here, Justin or Phil?
Me.
But if you click, okay, so Justin, if you click, yeah, there you go. So you see that 44-inch that nests on a baker's rack.
Oh, that's brilliant.
You can see where the posts go. Yeah.
Yep. The other two are for if you have a terrarium leap habitat solo, like on a dresser or something like that. But the 44-inch one nests on the rack.
Gotcha. So you can fit multiples on that one. That makes sense.
And I do want to say that those are more like insurance policies than anything, because I have mine fully planted with automatic misting systems going multiple times a day, and they don't. And with that origami tray in there, and with like the adhesion involved. They don't leak. But those pans are just like a good insurance policy, just in case, there is one.
God forbid it does overflow. It's not going to, destroy
exactly.
your house. Yeah.
Yep.
That substrate, by the way, is really, really fantastic. We've been
I still need
working
to watch
about
the
a
video
year on it. Oh yeah, well actually it's not one. So the videos, so the production videos, the ones that are scripted that Jack and I do, those are more infotainment, and we don't actually talk about our products explicitly at all. We're attempting to teach the community how substrate works, how to maintain a healthy substrate. That's the first series that we produce. The next series that we've produced that we haven't released yet is the lighting series, where we talk about all the different aspects of lighting, the technology behind it, the way you discuss it, the way you refer to it, the way you measure it. And that's the one that I'm really looking forward to, because coming from the reef aquarium world, where the knowledge of lighting is something we just kind of take it for granted that most people understand a lot of basics of lighting. And in the reptile community, that's just not the case. And I think we would be a lot better as a group if we understood some basic terms. And so, and some basic concepts. And so that's the thought behind the lighting. But all of it, I saw you were on the page on the website where we had the 5 parameters. All of it really goes back to this philosophy that we have that I came up with and that I polished out with the team, and Frank's given his blessing on, and we all kind of go back and feel that this is the right way to look at husbandry. You divide up husbandry into the 5 parameters, being 1, daylight and photo period, 2, UV, 3, heat, 4, rainfall in the form of a misting system, and 5, humidity in the form of a fogging system. And if we all talk about the animals we keep and the specific husbandry requirements of those animals relating to those 5 basic parameters, it becomes a lot easier for us to distill how to keep one animal versus another, and how to all be on the same page about what we need to do to better keep a chondro versus a leopard gecko.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
Justin, you're muted.
Yeah.
Dude. That is something that we talked about before too, was, there's the whole sort of debate, the dead horse of, PVC and racks versus, naturalistic Bavaria. And my thing is, there is no one size fits all option on either side. I'm a firm believer that you should do what the recipe calls for with that given species. There's some species where racks are perfect. There's some species where they're not, and you have people that are hardcore into Bavaria and think that that's the way it should be done. But I know there's a handful of species that just would not do well in that. Even if it's similar to a habitat they come from in captivity, it's just not the same. And then there's the same thing of, keeping giant constrictors into small racks where, they can't even move around. It's like, that's not how it's supposed to be either. And so the whole thing is just, it's getting out of hand and it's ridiculous, but it's like, why can't we just do what's supposed to be done for the species?
This whole industry is shades of gray, and we have to stop. We have to stop like weaponizing one another to tell one another that the way you're doing it is wrong. We really don't know right versus wrong. It's shades of gray. We can have our ideas, and I think that that's valid, but we can at least be respectful. Frank and I have talked about this before in the chameleon world. If you want to know the truth, in the with chameleons in the wild, a carpet chameleon probably doesn't survive much longer than 1 year in the wild because of the harshness of the environment it comes from.
Yeah.
So does that mean that to be natural, we should provide that harsh environment? No. But at the same time, in order to trigger a breeding response, we do have to provide an environmental trigger. And so how harsh should that environmental trigger be? I mean, there's so many questions now that are new that we've, as we learn all this stuff.
The whole debate for me kind of just goes out the window because it's like at the end of the day, we're all just keeping stuff in boxes.
Yeah.
It's like,
That's right.
Well, and this
whether
this
you're
is-
doing it in the form of a Ferrari or you're doing it in the way of like a 95 Corolla, like, does it really matter?
Well, if it lives a long life and reproduces, I think that's a good measure. That's one I look at.
what I was going to ask is, you guys have these awesome T5 bulbs coming out, and I'm a T5 advocate for both the aquarium stuff I used to do and reptiles now. But I don't know anything about saltwater, but I've always been enamored with their ability to do moon phases and thunderstorms and all that stuff, and different penetration levels of different heights of coral reef and stuff.
Perfect segue.
So right,
I
that's
mean,
what, right.
This is
So
the
Tim's the guy that created all that.
big
right,
part I
so-
want to get into.
yeah, so and I'm trying to you know where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah.
So our good friend Scott Eiper in Australia, he just made a thunderstorm reenacting enclosure for some of his stuff, and he even has the audio with like the thunder and the crashes and the flashes and all that, and it's awesome.
That's cool.
Do you guys see yourselves getting into something similar with that for the reptile world, whether it has UVB or not? Maybe syncing something up with either a weather app or having it where the keeper sets the schedule for, the quote unquote rainy season or time of week or whatever.
So, okay. So I'm going to answer the question by saying I'm not going to tell you how, the nature of it, etc.
Yeah, that's
But
a
I
lot
want-
in one sentence. My apologies.
Well, and hey, and it's a great conversation for, sitting at the bar at a trade show, right? Let's really geek out in terms of how we do things. But in terms of the direction, it's not a stretch to look at where we're coming from. And that's one of the reasons why we do try to explain the history of ecotech when we introduce LEAP. It's not hard to see where we've come from in the technology that we have available to us and the technology that we've pioneered in the saltwater aquarium industry. Once you see that and once you understand that, it's pretty clear the direction we're headed. And I'm not going to pretend like that's not the direction, because it is. And within the next so much time, I'm not gonna.
It's always next summer. It's always next
the near
Yeah,
future.
next summer, right?
next summer.
Yeah, the
When's the
future
next
is smart.
The near
The
future.
future is absolutely smart, and
It's within reach.
It's within reach, and we're the company to bring it to you. And everyone behind this, like, and I'm not just talking, my team of Jack and Kelsey and Frank and Brittany, who's my coordinator. She's my right-hand man, and David behind the camera, but also my business partners and the entire enterprise behind us has been watching this happen, has heard the needs of the reptile industry. Even operators on the assembly line have been like, wait, they don't have that? They don't have an app to control their lights in that market?
Yeah.
And it's just like, everyone's just like, we're coming in. And so yeah, I mean, the nuances to how it all happens is, I mean, I'm aware of them, I know them, but it's not conversation. But that is where LEAP is headed. That we will. I hope that within 2 years we're not offering a T5 lighting solution at all. That it's all LEDs.
Yeah.
And by that I mean specifically UV.
Sure.
And you will have an app. You will have an app by which you set up your LEAP products and program them all to work harmoniously with the 5 parameters of reptile husbandry. And there will be seasonal tables, and
Because we have friends that keep fish, and so they're always, they're talking about this technology, and they're always like, man, how come the herp community hasn't adopted any of this yet? So that's kind of the big question, and a big part of what I wanted to get into, with having you on here, coming from that realm. Like, how come the herp community is so slow to adopt things like that? Like,
It's
how
because
is
they're
it?
still
Why
selling
is
the
it?
heat rocks.
Why isn't the
I don't.
why is the fish community so far ahead?
It's
The aquatics community so far ahead.
it's because
Frank,
of the
you yeah,
yeah
you answer it.
it's because of the it's the fact that Tim, like the fact that it's still weird in a lot of people's eyes to be a reptile person versus a fish person. You say you have an aquarium at home and people literally don't bat an eye. You say you have a 6 foot long terrarium with lizards or snakes in it, and people are like, what? Still, but I do see it becoming more and more mainstream, where they're becoming more and more of like a popular pet, like an aquarium type thing. So I really just think that we are simply just behind. Like, our industry has just not been as mainstream, not been as accepted in the general population of pet keepers. It's always been niche. It's always been lizard nerds and snake nerds and frog nerds. You know what I mean? And it's not been hamsters. It's not been aquariums. It's not been dogs and cats. But I do start to see it going that way. And that's, there is a spot for this, like it's wide open because it doesn't exist, because we are 20, 30, 40 years behind the aquarium industry. And like, Tim mentioned some of the stuff, and you brought it up, Phil, like, as awesome as the enclosures are, I love them. They're like the thing that I'm like least excited about when it comes to Leap and all the stuff that is possible for the future.
Yeah, it feels like the enclosures are
it's the
solid
starting
foundation.
Point. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just think that it's, I've been the weird reptile guy at parties and at my friend's house my entire life, as we all have, and I just think it's always been something that just hasn't been as accepted. But I think that, with people wanting to be a little bit more maybe in touch with nature and have something naturalistic in their home, aquariums do that, but also terraria do that too. And I think that people are starting to realize that dart frogs have been such a great like ambassador for that. But there's no reason.
Easier to maintain than saltwater tanks too.
Oh my god!
So much.
Oh my god! And I had a 6 foot in wall saltwater tank that was awesome. My dog's throwing up over here. But then I switched it to he just comes over and hacks up. But then I switched it to a terrarium, a dart frog terrarium, and it was just like, well, now I'm bored because I have nothing to do because it's so easy.
Well, that's why you start another one.
And then that's exactly right. Then you get another and another.
I did go from 1 tank to 5 very quickly.
I have a personal opinion on that one too, which is, in a lot of homes, green and brown just looks a lot better than blue and purple.
Sure.
It's a more natural color.
We mentioned this on our other show, Snakes and Stogies, quite often, but we all have animals that we keep in sterile or not elaborate enclosures, whether it be for their personal care or just ease of maintenance. But all of us in our friend group and our colleagues and stuff, we appreciate the window into the ecosystem. So the same way that you can have a reef tank in your house, and like it's your view into the barrier reef or into the Bahamas or whatever kind of reef tank you're keeping, the reptiles can be very similar. I can have a window into East Africa. I can have a window into the Amazon or what have you, and Leap is gonna help facilitate that. I don't remember who had mentioned it, but and someone's going to correct me on my statistics here, but I'm pretty sure it's like, as of 2020 or maybe 2021, 1 in 25 Americans either has a pet reptile or knows someone who does something to that extent. And I think that we're at the foreground and the foundation's solid.
So yeah, we've been really researching the numbers lately. For a variety of different reasons. Leap was well on its way to happening one way or the other, but we've really been trying to like quantify exactly what's going on here. And what we've determined, or there's no way to know for sure. You have to kind of like trust some reports and trust some Google data and whatever else. So you can never know the real truth. But what we believe has happened is that reptiles have, let me back up. The amount of time that we've all in this conversation have been into reptiles, they've been more of a fringe hobby. in the same way that saltwater aquariums were a fringe hobby in the 90s. It was like an obscure version of freshwater, right?
Right,
It's like,
right.
oh, you're into saltwater. That's kind of weird, but cool,
Yeah.
right? Reptiles in general were an obscure just hobby. And what's happened now is that reptiles as pets, leopard gecko, bearded dragon, crested gecko, blue-tongued skink, and ball python, those are probably the most godlike ones. But
Yeah, the core
reptiles,
pets animals.
reptiles as pets have started to. They come in. They've knocked birds out. Parakeets they're not common anymore, or they're not. The numbers aren't as big.
Right.
And they're coming in. Yeah, and even for small, mammals, they're becoming the go-to modern day pet that the average family, not us, okay, but the average family is saying, you know what? Let's get Sally Joe or Timmy their first animal, and I think it's going to be a leopard gecko or a bearded dragon. I think they're ready for that responsibility.
Yeah.
And the numbers are there that support that mentality. And so as a brand, we have a job, because we know as hobbyists that when you have your first one, you're hooked. And that doesn't matter whether you're a kid or an adult, right?
Yeah.
So as a brand, we have a responsibility to make sure that they succeed. We have an ethical responsibility, and we have, a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that they succeed at that hobby. And selling a chameleon kit that is going to kill your animal within 6 months is not how you do it, right? So, that's what we all got to understand, is it's more than just a hobby. Guys, there's 10 years from now, there's going to be people coming in. They're like, oh, I've been having leopard geckos since I was 6.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's infinitely better than the hamster who perpetually bites the kid.
Hamsters are the devil.
I have a really awesome hamster, so I'm a little biased, but
yeah, but you're a fish guy. You're weird.
my favorite at-home pet is my Claudius. Do you guys know turtles at all? So I have a Claudius angustatus. It's a narrow-bridged musk turtle.
Oh, okay.
And I'm always showing Frank this thing. And Frank still insists
he's obsessed with this. He's obsessed with this turtle.
No, this turtle is the coolest. He's this big, and he's a full-on snapping turtle that'll never get bigger than this big. And he is so fun to watch. And he's entirely aquatic. He doesn't need a dry area. He just lives in his tank all day long. And he's super easy to keep, and he's super fun. And just don't pet him. It won't work out for you.
That's cool.
So what are things that the herp community could or should adopt from the aquatics community, in your opinions?
LEDs, for one thing. App-driven products, more intelligent, more pre-programmable product line.
Something that's a display in home. Like for guys like us that are keeping large numbers of animals, that's not always the case and is always reasonable. But for your average person who's keeping pet reptiles, or somebody, or say a kind of a small scale hobbyist or breeder, more aesthetic, making it look better for you, for your living space. I'm getting better at it, but I remember growing up, it didn't look good. It looked like a bunch of stuff all thrown together, and that's how we've all done it for so long. And if you look at aquariums, it looks better.
Yeah, how many years did we all have fish tank decor in a reptile enclosure, and there's a little spigot on the side for the air pump? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, what's the running joke that I think Burke and them say all the time is this is one of few hobbies where we'll spend, $10,000 on an animal and keep it in a $30 setup.
Yeah.
Tim and I talk about that all the time.
That right there is what needs to change. If you want to talk about what reptile hobbyists need to learn from fish hobbyists, so fish hobbyists will also spend a ton of money on coral. I mean, I'm talking a coral this big could cost them $1,000, right? and it'll grow into a colony, but that's the hope, and only if you're good. Reptile hobbyists in general need to learn that there's that quality costs more, but they're not going to learn that when the companies that are delivering products to the marketplace don't offer any value. And I'm not afraid to introduce a product with more value at a higher price point, because it might not be the number one most adopted product on the market, but if it delivers something that is of benefit to the community, it'll catch on. When we started Ecotech, we introduced a pump for about $350 a unit, and we were competing against pumps that were $25. And we built a enterprise out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay I don't blame the reptile community for the way we treat, product pricing right now. I just think we haven't had the right people delivering, truly exciting technology to the marketplace. And I think that when a company like ours comes in and starts doing it, that you'll see others as well. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be honest too. When I was looking through the website the other day, I think Phil probably saw it. I looked at them. I was like, "There's no way these are, these got to be price similar to the Exos and the other stuff that we typically see." And then our buddy Elijah Day sent me a screenshot of the price of a Exo the same size as the one that was there, and it was literally like over $100 difference. I was like, "Oh, okay."
Oh yeah, and all that stuff's going up, man. I mean, obviously, we know, as all of us work in our respective fields, we all know that, the pandemic and shipping and manufacturing and crap, the mine in Brazil that's mining the iron ore, like all that stuff shuts down. It gets delayed. It slows down, boats offshore, the whole shebang. And I recently went to go look at a new Exoterra for my girlfriend's snake, and I was flabbergasted at how much more they were from the last time I bought an Exo. So the fact that you guys are manufacturing in-house and the articulation of the enclosure and the craftsmanship of the enclosure, and I don't have to, cut off a pinky to buy it, that's phenomenal.
Well, it's all about the fact that those cages, you can ship about 10 times more in a container than you can a glass terrarium.
Yeah, shipping on the Exos and stuff is just unbelievable, no matter who you get.
And that's why.
And no shrinkage either from breaking.
Yes.
Of the,
so explain
the
that just for any viewers who don't know what shrinkage is. Frank, why don't you explain that?
Oh, sure. So, pet stores and whatnot, and even like online suppliers, like maybe Josh's Frogs or whoever else sells his glass terrariums. Shrinkage is whenever you have a product break before it can be a break or be unusable before it can be sold to a customer, right? So the amount of shrinkage involved in glass terrariums is awful, right? Because they are by their nature.
It's not awful. It's not awful. It's atrocious. I think if you order a pallet of 10-gallon, I don't want to name drop, but like Marineland, right? Yeah. If I have an account with Marineland or one of their, subsidiaries, and I buy a pallet of 10-gallon glass aquariums, I think it's like at least 15 to 20% of them are shattered before it ever gets to the truck. Yeah. Like that's crazy.
Yeah. And so we studied the supply chain. Well, no, so we studied the supply chain, and it's going to vary from brand to brand, but at least in the glass terrarium world, the onus is on the store to report back the damage, and then they get a credit for their next order. But that doesn't help the store.
Right.
And that's something that we needed to resolve. Imagine a stack of Leap terrarium boxes with one built on top of it. That's a lot more inventory for that store than a shelf of glass,
Yeah, I mean, you think about that too, just that aspect of how much space they take up in back rooms and things like that. It's
at the storefront, at the point of purchase. The glass terrariums take up a tremendous space. That matters. Everyone is paying. So when you consider the difference in dollars for the end user just through the economy of the manufacturing process of the leap habitat. And then you also consider the efficiencies of through the distribution cycle. It's a win for everybody.
Yeah. Especially when talking about like pallets of tanks. If I order 20 tanks and 5 are broken, I still have to wait. I'm going to get a credit, but I'm still without those 5 for however many weeks it may take
for who knows how long.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and with the crunch now, I mean, you might not get them,
especially these days. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that the container prices will come down. So we're paying about 20 to 25 grand. Normal price is 2,500. So the container prices will come down.
Wow.
Yeah.
We all made the same sound.
Collective pain.
The amount of
America collectively made the same sound.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now, you know, you can do the math if you go online and you assume that you just pick one of our habitats and compare it to its glass equivalent, figure out how many you fit in a container, and then, you know, I'll give you the number of we're between 25% the space and 10% of the space in general. And, you know, in our flat pack configuration, and it's a lot cheaper to ship. So it matters. It really matters.
And what's the lead time going to be once everything is finalized and flying off the shelf, so to speak?
So if the product is in, so we're launching direct to the consumer, and that's a big goal for us as an enterprise as well. We've never done that before, but nowadays with Shopify and everything else, and we already have a shipping department, and we have a wonderful UPS account and FedEx. Well, it's FedEx actually that we use. There is no reason not to try direct to the consumer. You can pay via PayPal. You can, you don't have to register or anything like that. The typical turnaround for our enterprise for that kind of thing is within a couple days before it ships. When the material is no longer in inventory, it will go off the website. You won't be able to buy it anymore.
Okay.
So I don't have a crystal ball, and I cannot tell you how long our initial order will last. But I can tell you that within the year, we will get we're supply chain specialists. And within the first year, we will get our supply chain right with, deliveries weekly for the things we need. And that we will have ongoing stock, and hopefully won't be one of those businesses that we all know that just don't have everything. I would urge all of us to give a little compassion this day and age to any business, but this is our launch. We picked a number, we based it on math and research, and we'll see how far we go through it. And if the velocity of the outgoing product is within reason, we should be able to recover from that quickly enough that that we won't be out of stock for very long before the future of ongoing deliveries happens. But if for some reason we grossly underestimated the demand, there could be a period of a few months maybe where you won't be able to get it after we sell through.
And I imagine, because you guys are manufacturers, and I assume with all this logistical stuff and selling directly to the end user, you have some kind of point of sale system where you're going to be able to ration yourself. So if you've got 10 units, you're not going to put all 10 on the line at once per se, because you want to be able to keep the flow going. You know what I mean? And
everything will be for sale while it's available.
Okay.
So
what I was getting at
the
is that
inventory will be added to the website when it exists, and when it's gone, it's done, and you won't be buying it anymore.
Okay, so that was my segue to nothing is necessarily shipped to order where I buy the 30 breeder, whatever you want to call it, and you tell me, okay, well that's a 6-week lead time because we have to put it together or whatever.
Or the Glock store MO of it's in stock, and then when you buy, you get an email saying it's actually not in stock and we don't know when you'll get it, but we'll bill you when it does come in.
No. When you buy something from the website that's in stock finished good inventory.
Cool.
So that means it's on our books as a finished good, and it's ready to ship. When that finished good is exhausted, it will be off the website, and you will not be able to buy it.
Cool. I like it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let me see. So we asked some of our friends too if they had any questions, and we've already answered that question. It was, what are you doing to be competitive with other cage brands? But we pretty much just covered all that. So
that's like our mission statement, right?
Yeah.
And the answer is everything.
And because, again, personal agenda question, the backdrops on them.
Of course, I knew he was going to ask this. He's so weird about the pictures.
I want the window into the ecosystem. So, like, I actually started getting. There's a company online that you can upload your own photo if you want, which I think is super cool, and I've done that. And then they have like hundreds to choose from. But basically, it's a UV resistant, self-adhesive vinyl that goes in the inside of the enclosure.
Yep.
You guys read
That's
my
what
mind.
ours is. That's
Okay.
what ours is.
Yeah.
So it's a lamination. It's a UV resistant, self-adhesive lamination that's machine applied at the factory, so that it's a perfect application. So at this time, to deliver different backgrounds, we have to design and pre-purchase in volume. What is possible, and this is like my manufacturing geekness, right?
Okay.
But what is possible, of course, as the brand builds and earns rapport within the enterprise, is being worthwhile of further investment and everything else, is, we could have a build to order type thing where we offer you 25 different designs or 50 different designs, and you pick one. And we laminate the corrugated for you. We wouldn't do a custom size. That's getting too crazy. But the laminating the corrugated is a reasonably easy thing to do. So, I mean, is that something that I've targeted for 2022? No. But is it a concept that we all have discussed and know that is possible? Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
So, the other thing too is that you can just peel it off and put it doesn't really peel off that easily, but you could laminate right over the top of it with a different background if you wanted to.
Cool. Answer my question.
So that's always an option as well. In fact, that was our kind of go-to option, was that we would sell potentially like a tube with a vinyl background that you could add on your own.
Yeah, I didn't know if they came like that and the end user had to actually adhere that themselves, but yeah.
No, the jungle background is pre-installed already. Cool. And it has definitely been a topic of, well, what about black? What about white? What about desert? And then what about the myriad of other options?
Right.
And it's going to be a conversation all throughout the year of, how best to deal with that, to please as many people as possible, but also not be spending 80% of our time on 20% of the market.
Yeah. Right. I get it. Very cool, man. Very cool.
Yeah. So we're at like the 2-hour mark now, just about. So if anybody has any questions, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Without a doubt, Leap on Facebook. We're building Leap on Facebook. We started on Instagram. That was our primary, but Leap on Facebook's really, really big for us. So hit us up there. It's Leap Habitats on Facebook. It's easy to find. Instagram as well. Leap Habitats on Instagram. Also leap.tim, leap.jack, and leap.kelsey. You can follow all of our individual pages and see our own unique perspective on the brand and what we're most passionate about. And you can follow Leap Habitats as well. But Jack is monitoring all leap habitats on Instagram as well as Facebook. Facebook provides, I believe, Facebook. Well, actually, I'm not even going to say. We'll figure out how to get all of us behind all of those so that we can all be helpful. Once we launch, we will also have our customer service department at Ecotech trained in the LEAP product questions. But as far as like reptile advice and things like that, it's not going to be right off the bat with our customer service. We know that it's something that we will probably have to begin hiring reptile focused customer service to man the phones, because that is how we traditionally work. Is if you have a problem with an Ecotech product, you call us and we are happy to help you, including providing advice. And so
That's
I could
awesome.
see the same thing happening for reptiles. But for now, if you want advice, if you want hobbyist feedback, the social media channels are the best way to get it.
Yeah, man, I can't tell you how annoyed I get with my retail work and trying to get an actual human on a phone opposed to email or text or whatever it is. So that's commendable.
Frank?
Oh, yeah, you can find me on Facebook as well. Everything's through my business page, which is Living Art by Frank Payne. And that's everything is through that. Website, same name, YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook. All that's Living Art by Frank Payne. I'm on it all the time, respond to messages, pretty well. Yeah, so any of those.
Frank's going to be at a lot of shows too.
Yeah.
And then Jack and I, and hopefully Frank too, are going to be traveling to shows throughout the year.
You guys planning to go to Daytona?
When is it?
When is it this year? It's the last weekend in August.
August. It's not always the last week.
It's always right around my birthday. It's like right around August.
Yeah, it's usually like
right
19, 20. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was at Daytona as a kid, and I know, it has some weight for me. And I know Tinley is super popular right now. And those are kind of the big ones that I would like to hit for sure. We have a budget, and it's just a matter of finalizing what shows we're going to go to. And at the point that it is finalized, we will be publishing them.
Cool.
Yeah, it's August 20th and 21st of the two customer days.
Well, I know I'm not on vacation those days, so that works.
Best weekend of the year.
Yep. Reptile Mecca.
That's right.
Sounds good. Day after my birthday, so I'll buy a bunch of stuff for myself.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about Daytona is that we always joke it's about the animals are a bonus. It's about hanging out with
it's a party,
chosen family. Yeah, and so many people come and make a week out of it with their family, their actual families. So if you guys definitely look into vending and or just showing up,
Yeah, I hope so. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know I'll be there. It's just a matter of whether or not Leap will have a table.
Fair enough.
I assume there's a lead time, and we're probably well past it.
You'd be surprised, man. So I would definitely check into it. So
okay.
Yeah, they have people back out last minute for booths and stuff pretty regularly from the sounds of it too, especially late in the year. So
and because it was so successful last year or the year before even that they expanded the number of vendors that they allow. So
that's good.
They're constantly adding more new vendors. So
even with the space they have, I feel like they could even add more than they do. Like they don't.
Yeah, but I think it comes down.
Corner,
yeah, but I think it comes down to like the convention center, like the city ordinances of how many vendors
code and all that.
Fire. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, we really appreciate y'all coming on.
Thanks for having us.
100%, guys. It was awesome.
Great first episode of the year.
Huge. I mean, guys, this is really appreciated from my perspective too, because we just launched 3 days ago, and to be invited to sit and talk on a video podcast like this is like a real honor for me, and I really, really, truly appreciate it.
We're just spoiled because we got the first one.
That's what I mean. That's the game that all the podcaster folks play. Like Frank's been on Lizard Brain, and I know he's been on some other stuff, and so it's like I've wanted to have him on, but I try not to do it within a a month period or 2-month period or even longer than that, of him being on other stuff, so that we're not just having the same episode.
Yeah.
And I try to usually target something in particular, like carpet chameleons is definitely something I want to talk to Frank about more at some point in another episode.
Sounds great.
Euryplatus, obviously. So we'll have to make that
always happy to come back, man, for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah, thanks a lot.
This show was
Thank you, guys.
brought to you by Steve Snakes Uranus Venom Hot Sauce. We completely forgot Steve at the beginning of the show.
We did.
So
Our apologies, Steve-O.
He'll understand.
He will.
We were excited. It's the first show of the year.
He'll laugh.
He will. We will see everybody Monday night at 9 for Snakes and Stogies.
4?
I don't know.
I think it's 104.
It's somewhere in the hundreds.
Because Casey was 103.
Okay, then 104. Yeah. All right, everyone have a good evening. Subscribe, all that good stuff. We have a Patreon now, minimum of $1 a month. You can help support the network. Do it, don't do it. We're okay either way.
Yeah.
We just appreciate the listenership.
We do. And don't forget to go on all of your major podcast providing apps and networks to look for Venom Exchange Radio with Nipper and myself, the new Venomous podcast. It's on Apple, Google Play, and Spotify now. So definitely check it out if you want to listen to Venomous stuff.
It's very good. 10 out of 10. Fully recommend it. All right. Everybody have a good evening, good morning, good day. Whenever you're listening or watching this, we'll see you later.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.